The silence in the High Council chamber was complete. Ambassador Thekvar stared at the ancient data crystal in his three-fingered hand, its surface glowing with soft blue light. Around the circular table, representatives from 12 different species waited for him to speak. None of them knew what the crystal contained. Only Thekvar had clearance to access the deepest archives of the Galactic Confederation. "The humans are stirring," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several ambassadors leaned back in their seats. The Zephyrian delegate's tentacles curled tight against her body. Even the massive Korgan representative, known for his fearlessness in battle, shifted uncomfortably. "That's impossible," said Ambassador Helt from the Rigelian system. "The seal has held for 800 years. Our best scientists confirmed it would last for millennia." Thekvar activated the crystal. A holographic display filled the center of the chamber, showing star charts and energy readings that made no sense to most of the gathered delegates. These readings were taken 3 days ago from monitoring stations around the quarantine zone. "The barriers are weakening." The Zephyrian ambassador, Sela, spoke next. Her voice carried the musical tones of her species, but now it trembled with fear. "How much time do we have?" "Our scientists estimate 6 months before the first breaches." "Maybe less." Silence fell again. Each ambassador was lost in their own thoughts, remembering the stories passed down from their predecessors. The humans had appeared in the galaxy like a storm. One day they were confined to a single blue planet. The next they were spreading across star systems at a rate that terrified every established civilization. Ambassador Helt cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should review the historical records. Some of us are too young to remember the original threat assessment." Thekvar nodded and touched the crystal again. The holographic display changed, showing images of sleek ships with strange markings. These were the vessels that had first brought humanity to the attention of the galactic community. The humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years after they split the atom, Thekvar began. "Most species take at least 500 years to make that leap. They went from wooden sailing ships to starships in less than 3 centuries. The speed of their advancement was unprecedented. New images appeared. Battles in space showing human ships fighting impossible odds. Cities being built on hostile worlds where no life should exist. Humans working alongside species that had been enemies for generations. But it wasn't just their technology that worried the Council," Thekvar continued. "It was their nature. They formed alliances with anyone willing to talk to them. They turned enemies into friends. They refused to accept that anything was impossible." The hologram showed a human colony ship landing on a world covered in deadly radiation. Within 10 years, the same world was green and thriving, with multiple species living together in harmony. "The breaking point came during the Centauri Wars," Thekvar said. The display showed massive fleets engaged in battle. The Drakmari Empire had been expanding for centuries. They had conquered or destroyed dozens of civilizations. Everyone expected them to crush the human colonies easily. The images changed to show something impossible. Drakmari warships flying alongside human vessels, their weapons pointed at other Drakmari fleets. Instead, the humans convinced half the Drakmari military to switch sides. They didn't destroy the empire, they transformed it. Within 2 years, the Drakmari had become one of humanity's strongest allies. Ambassador Korval, the Korgan representative, slammed his massive fist on the table. "You're making them sound like heroes. They were dangerous, unpredictable." "That's exactly why they were dangerous," Thekvar replied. "We couldn't understand them. Our psychologists studied them for decades and never reached a consensus about human nature. They could be incredibly peaceful, then suddenly become the most fierce warriors anyone had ever seen. They saved civilizations from extinction, then helped those same civilizations rebuild themselves into something completely new." The hologram shifted to show Earth itself, a blue marble hanging in space, surrounded by a strange shimmer that bent light around it. "The decision to create the quarantine was not made lightly," Thekvar said. "The High Council debated for months. Some wanted to destroy Earth entirely. Others suggested trying to negotiate restrictions on human expansion. But in the end, the temporal spatial barrier seemed like the most humane solution." Ambassador Sela's tentacles writhed with emotion. "Humane? We imprisoned an entire species. We removed them from normal space-time," Thekvar corrected. "The barrier was designed to give them their own isolated pocket of reality. They would still exist, but they couldn't interfere with galactic civilization anymore." And now the barrier is failing, Helt said grimly. Thekvar nodded. The question is, what do we do about it? The chamber erupted in voices. Some demanded immediate military action. Others suggested trying to strengthen the barrier. A few even proposed attempting contact with the humans before they fully emerged. Quiet. Corval's roar silenced the chamber. Before we decide anything, I want to know what the humans have been doing for 800 years. Are they even still alive in there? Thekvar manipulated the crystal again. New readings appeared, showing energy signatures from within the quarantine zone. We've detected signs of advanced technology, massive construction projects, energy outputs that suggest they've continued developing their civilization. Or they've built weapons to destroy us all, muttered the Rigelian ambassador. There's something else, Thekvar said quietly. Long-range sensors have detected anomalies. Ships have reported seeing vessels that match human designs, but they appear and disappear before detailed scans can be completed. It's as if they're testing the boundaries of their prison. The implications hung heavy in the air. If the humans were already finding ways to breach the barrier, even temporarily, they might know about the current state of the galaxy. They might be planning their return. Ambassador Sela spoke into the silence. What if we were wrong? What if imprisoning them was a mistake? It's too late for such thoughts, Corval growled. The question is whether we fight them or try to negotiate when they return. Fight them? Hilt laughed bitterly. They turned the Drakmari Empire inside out without firing a shot. They convinced species who had been enemies for millennia to work together. What makes you think we could fight them effectively? Thekvar stood up slowly, his aging frame showing the weight of his years. There's one more thing you all need to know. The barrier wasn't just designed to keep them in. It was designed to keep us out. We have no idea what they've become during their imprisonment. They could be exactly the same as when we locked them away, or they could be something entirely new. He deactivated the crystal and the holographic displays faded away. The Confederation has 6 months to prepare for humanity's return. We can use that time to build defenses, or we can use it to figure out how to welcome them back into the galaxy. Welcome them back? Corval stood up, his massive frame towering over the others. They were a threat 800 years ago with primitive technology. What do you think they'll be now? I think, Tekvar said slowly, that we're about to find out if the humans learned anything during their isolation. And more importantly, we're about to find out if we learned anything either. The meeting ended with no decisions made, but everyone understood the truth. The galaxy was about to change forever. The question was whether that change would bring destruction or something none of them could imagine. As the ambassadors filed out, each returned to their home systems with the same message. Humanity was coming back. The only question was whether the galaxy was ready for them. Dr. Zelix Morden brushed the ancient dust from the stone tablet with careful, practiced movements. His forearms worked in perfect coordination, 2 holding scanning equipment while the other 2 cleared away centuries of debris. The ruins on Keth Prime had been calling to him for months, ever since the first gravitational anomalies had been detected across the galaxy. The Cathari were known throughout the Confederation as the galaxy's best archaeologists. Their natural patience and attention to detail made them perfect for uncovering the secrets of dead civilizations. But what Zelix was finding in these ruins challenged everything he thought he knew about galactic history. Computer, translate this text using the ancient Drakmari linguistic database, he said, pointing his scanner at a section of carved symbols. The translation appeared on his portable screen. When the sealed ones return, the stars themselves will tremble. They who turn weakness into strength, defeat into victory, enemies into brothers. Zelix felt his secondary heart skip a beat. This was the 15th reference to sealed ones he had found in the ruins. The ancient Drakmari had been obsessed with them, building entire temples dedicated to their memory. But according to official Confederation records, the Drakmari had never encountered any species matching these descriptions. His communicator buzzed. Dr. Mordan, this is Captain Vexhai of the survey ship Distant Star. We're detecting some unusual readings from your location. Zelix looked up at the sky, where he could just make out the shape of the ship orbiting the dead planet. What kind of readings, Captain? Gravitational fluctuations? Small ones, but they match the pattern of anomalies we've been tracking across this sector. They seem to be centered on the ruins you're exploring. That was impossible. Gravitational anomalies required massive amounts of energy, or the presence of exotic matter. Ancient ruins shouldn't be able to generate such readings. Unless... Zelix hurried deeper into the temple complex, following a corridor lined with more carved symbols. The deeper he went, the more recent the carvings appeared to be. Someone had been adding to these ruins for centuries, right up until the planet died. He reached a chamber at the heart of the complex and stopped in amazement. The walls were covered in mathematical equations carved into the stone. Not primitive scratches, but complex formulas that looked like advanced theoretical physics. At the center of the room stood a stone pedestal holding what looked like a star chart. But this wasn't any star chart Zelix had ever seen. It showed the galaxy as it existed now, not as it had been when these ruins were built. Worse, it showed something that made his blood run cold. Empty space where a star system should be, surrounded by strange symbols that pulsed with faint light. "Computer, analyze these mathematical formulas," he said, scanning the walls. The analysis took several minutes. When it finished, Zelix had to sit down heavily on a broken piece of stone. The equations described the theoretical framework for creating a temporal spatial barrier. The same type of barrier that the High Council had used to quarantine the humans 800 years ago. But these equations were far more advanced than anything in the Confederation's scientific databases. They included calculations for barrier degradation, energy bleed-through, and dimensional resonance effects. Someone had understood the science behind the human quarantine better than the scientists who created it. His communicator buzzed again. "Dr. Morton, you need to see this. We're picking up visual distortions in space near the third moon." Zelix rushed outside the temple and looked up. At first he saw nothing unusual. Then the air itself seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot ground. But this was impossible. Keth Prime had no atmosphere thick enough to create such effects. "Captain, are you recording this?" "Yes, Doctor." "And it gets stranger. Our sensors are detecting trace radiation signatures that match no known species in our databases." The shimmer intensified, and for just a moment, Zelix thought he saw something impossible. A shape in the distortion that looked like a ship, but unlike any vessel he had ever seen. It was there for perhaps 3 seconds, then vanished completely. "Did you see that?" The captain's voice was tight with concern. "I saw something, Captain. I need you to contact Confederation Command immediately. Tell them we may have found evidence of barrier degradation in this sector." "Barrier degradation? Doctor, what exactly have you discovered down there?" Zelix looked back at the temple, then at the space where the impossible ship had appeared. "I think I've found proof that someone has been watching us. Someone who's been trapped for a very long time." Over the next several hours, Zelix transmitted his findings to the Confederation Archaeological Council. The response was immediate and troubling. Teams across the galaxy reported similar discoveries. Ancient ruins with references to sealed beings, mathematical formulas that shouldn't exist, and gravitational anomalies that were increasing in frequency. Dr. Yilan Sek, the chief archaeologist, contacted Zelix directly. "Dr. Mordan, your discoveries match reports from 17 different worlds. We're seeing a pattern that suggests these ruins were all built by civilizations that had contact with an advanced species, a species that vanished from galactic records 800 years ago." "The humans," Zelix said. "It wasn't a question. We think so. But there's more. The gravitational anomalies you're detecting? They're not random. They're forming a pattern that points toward a specific region of space. A region that's been marked as forbidden in our navigation charts for centuries." Zelix felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place. "The quarantine zone." "Exactly. Dr. Mordan, we believe the barrier is failing faster than anyone anticipated. The anomalies suggest that reality itself is becoming unstable around the quarantine zone." That night, Zelix camped in the temple ruins, unable to sleep. He kept thinking about the equations on the walls, the impossible ship he had glimpsed, and the implications of what he had discovered. The ancient Drakmari hadn't just known about humans, they had been preparing for their return. Around midnight, the gravitational readings spiked again. Zelix grabbed his scanner and rushed to the central chamber. The star chart on the pedestal was glowing now, its light pulsing in a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. As he watched, new symbols appeared on the chart, marking locations throughout the galaxy. Each symbol appeared at the exact coordinates where gravitational anomalies had been detected. The chart was updating itself in real time, tracking the degradation of the quarantine barrier. "Computer, Record everything, Zelix whispered. The glow intensified, and suddenly Zelix could see more than just symbols on the chart. Images flickered in the light, glimpses of ships, cities, technologies that defied understanding. For a brief moment he saw faces, human faces but changed somehow, enhanced. Their eyes held knowledge and determination that sent chills through his exoskeleton. Then the light faded, leaving only the stone chart and the lingering scent of ozone in the air. Zelix transmitted his recording to Dr. Sek immediately. The response came back within minutes. Pack everything and return to Confederation space immediately. We're calling an emergency session of the High Council. As Zelix's shuttle lifted off from Keth Prime, he looked back at the ruins one last time. The temple was dark now, but he had the distinct feeling that he was being watched, not by anything on the dead planet, but by something far away, looking through the growing cracks in reality itself. The humans were coming back, and they had been preparing for this moment for 800 years. The question that haunted Zelix as his ship jumped to faster than light speed was simple. What had they become during their imprisonment? The glimpses he had seen suggested beings far beyond what the galaxy remembered. The equations proved they understood sciences that the Confederation was only beginning to discover. Whatever was coming through those weakening barriers, Zelix was certain of one thing: the galaxy was not ready for it. The barrier shattered at 1427 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Elena Vasquez felt it happen through the neural link that connected her to the Earth Defense Corps ship, Indomitable. The sensation was like breaking through the surface of water after holding her breath for a lifetime. Around her, the bridge crew let out collective sighs of relief as their instruments confirmed what they all felt. They were free. Navigation. Confirm our position, Elena said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Lieutenant Commander Park checked his displays. We're exactly where we should be, Captain. Sol system, Earth orbit, but... He paused, looking confused. According to the long-range sensors, the galaxy has changed significantly. Elena nodded. They had been watching through quantum tears in their prison for decades, learning about every major development in galactic civilization. The Confederation had grown larger but more rigid. New species had joined, but always under the same restrictive rules. The galaxy had become stagnant. Communications: send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the barrier is down and we're beginning the first reconnaissance mission in 800 years. Message sent, Captain. Admiral Chen sends his regards and reminds you that we represent all of humanity today. Elena smiled grimly. No pressure at all. She was about to make first contact with a galaxy that had tried to imprison her entire species. The humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment, but preparation and reality were different things. Helm, take us to the edge of the system. Let's see what's waiting for us out there. The Indomitable was unlike the ships that had carried humanity to the stars centuries ago. 800 years of forced isolation had pushed human technology in directions that the galaxy had never imagined. The ship moved through space like a living thing, its hull shifting and adapting to different conditions. Its weapon systems were integrated so completely with its defensive systems that the line between offense and defense had disappeared entirely. Elena herself was different too. The genetic and cybernetic enhancements that all humans now carried would have seemed like magic to her ancestors. Her reflexes were faster. Her mind could process information at superhuman speeds, and her lifespan had been extended to centuries. But the most important change was harder to see. Humans had learned to think collectively while maintaining their individuality. Captain, we're detecting a Confederation patrol fleet at the system's edge, reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. 5 ships, Corgan design. They appear to be maintaining a safe distance. Safe distance from what? Elena asked. They can't have detected us yet. From the gravitational distortions, ma'am. The barrier collapse created some pretty spectacular fireworks. They're probably trying to figure out what happened. Elena studied the tactical display. The Corgan ships were powerful, but they were using technology that humans had surpassed decades ago. Still, this wasn't about winning a fight. This was about proving that humanity had evolved beyond the species that had frightened the galaxy 800 years ago. Open a communication channel, she ordered. Channel open, Captain. Elena took a deep breath. The first word spoken between humanity and the galaxy in 8 centuries. Confederation patrol fleet. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Defense Corps ship Indomitable. We come in peace and request diplomatic contact with your government." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Elena could imagine the panic on the alien ships as they tried to process what they were hearing. Humans weren't supposed to exist anymore. The quarantine had been designed to last for millennia. Finally, a gruff voice responded in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Brachtal of the CCS Iron Hammer. Identify yourself and explain how you breached the quarantine zone." "Commander Brachtal, I am human. My species was imprisoned in this system 800 years ago by your Confederation. The barrier has failed, and we are now free to rejoin galactic civilization." Another long pause. Elena could almost hear the frantic communications between the patrol ships and their command structure. This situation was so far outside normal protocols that nobody would know how to respond. "Captain Vasquez," Commander Brachtal's voice was more cautious now. "My government will want to verify your claims. Are you willing to allow a diplomatic team aboard your vessel?" Elena exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander Sarah Kim. They had anticipated this request. "Commander, we would be happy to host diplomatic contact. However, given the history between our species and the Confederation, I'm sure you'll understand our need for certain precautions." "What kind of precautions?" "We will meet on neutral ground. There's an asteroid in this system that would serve perfectly. We'll establish a temporary habitat there for our meeting." What Elena didn't mention was that humans could now build functional habitats in a matter of hours, using self-assembling technology. The Confederation diplomats would find themselves in an environment that would demonstrate human capabilities without seeming threatening. 3 hours later, Elena stood in a comfortable meeting room that hadn't existed that morning. The asteroid had been transformed into a small but elegant diplomatic facility, complete with life support systems compatible with dozens of different species. The Confederation diplomatic team arrived in a shuttle that looked clunky compared to human technology. Elena watched through the habitat's sensors as 3 figures emerged: a massive Korgan in military dress, a slender Rigelian in diplomatic robes, and a Cathari archaeologist whose presence surprised her. "Dr. Zelix Morden," she said as the 3 aliens entered the meeting room. "Your recent discoveries about human history have been quite interesting." The Cathari's 4 eyes widened in surprise. "You know about my research?" Elena smiled. "Dr. Morden, we've been watching the galaxy through quantum fractures in our prison for decades. We know about the gravitational anomalies, the ancient ruins, and the High Council's emergency sessions. We know that the Confederation has been preparing for our return." Commander Brachtal's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. "You've been spying on us?" "We've been learning," Elena corrected. "There's a difference. We needed to understand what the galaxy had become during our absence." The Rigelian diplomat, Ambassador Helt, spoke for the first time. "Captain Vasquez, what do you want? Why have you made contact instead of simply leaving?" Elena had expected this question. "Ambassador, 800 years ago, humanity was feared because we were unpredictable. We formed alliances with unlikely partners. We solved problems in ways that nobody expected. We refused to accept the established order. And now?" Dr. Morden asked quietly. "Now we've had 8 centuries to think about what went wrong. We've realized that our mistake wasn't being different from other species. Our mistake was not helping others understand that being different could be a strength, not a threat." Elena activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. It showed the current state of the galaxy, the rigid hierarchies, the stagnant borders, the species that had been denied advancement for centuries. "The galaxy has been at peace for 800 years, she continued. "But it's the peace of stagnation. New species are absorbed into existing power structures, instead of being allowed to find their own paths. Scientific advancement has slowed to a crawl because innovation is seen as disruption." Commander Brachtal growled. "The Confederation has provided stability and prosperity." "For some," Elena agreed. "But what about the species in the outer rim, who are still forbidden from developing faster than light travel? What about the restrictions on artificial intelligence research? What about the ban on genetic enhancement? Those restrictions exist for good reasons," Ambassador Helt said defensively. Elena smiled sadly. "Those restrictions exist because the Confederation is afraid of change, just like you were afraid of us." She changed the holographic display to show human colonies during the brief period before the quarantine. Worlds where multiple species worked together on projects that none could have accomplished alone. Cities where former enemies lived as neighbors. Technologies that blended the best ideas from dozens of different civilizations. "This is what we want to build again," Elena said. "Not human dominance, but human partnership. We want to help species reach their full potential instead of being limited by someone else's fears." Dr. Mordan leaned forward. "And if the Confederation refuses?" Elena's expression became serious. "Then we'll work with anyone who's willing to try something new. We've learned a lot during our imprisonment, Dr. Morden. We've learned to be patient. We've learned to be careful, but we haven't learned to accept injustice." The meeting continued for several more hours, but Elena knew that the real negotiation wouldn't happen here. It would happen when these three returned to their governments with proof that humanity had not only survived their imprisonment, but had emerged stronger than ever. As the Confederation shuttle departed, Elena looked out at the stars that had been denied to her species for so long. Somewhere out there, the High Council was deciding whether to welcome humanity back or try to destroy them. Elena hoped they would choose wisely, because this time humanity was ready for whatever came next. The news of humanity's return spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every major news network was broadcasting the same impossible story. The quarantined species had broken free after 800 years of imprisonment. On the Confederation capital world of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions of the High Council ran around the clock. The great assembly hall that normally echoed with dignified debate now rang with shouted arguments and accusations. "They've been watching us." Senator Crixval slammed his armored fist on his desk. "For decades, maybe centuries. They know our weaknesses, our defenses, our military capabilities." Ambassador Sila's tentacles writhed with emotion. "And what have we learned about them? Nothing. We don't even know if the beings we met are truly human anymore." The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed footage from the diplomatic meeting. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared almost human, but the subtle differences were unsettling. Her movements were too precise, her reactions too fast. Her eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost artificial. Thekvar stood slowly, his age evident in every movement. "The question before us is simple. Do we treat this as an opportunity or a threat?" "Threat," roared General Vortan, the Drakmari military representative. "They speak of partnership, but their ships are weapons beyond our current capabilities. Their technology could revolutionize warfare. We cannot allow them to establish themselves freely." "And if we attack them?" asked Dr. Yelan Sek from the Archaeological Council. "Dr. Mordan's report suggests they've been preparing for this moment for centuries. What if this is exactly what they expect us to do?" The debate raged for hours, but outside the council chambers, the galaxy was already choosing sides. On worlds throughout the Confederation, the reaction to humanity's return split along predictable lines. On Rigel 7, Governor Nathak called an emergency meeting of his planetary council. "The humans offer advancement without restrictions," he told the assembled representatives. "For centuries we've been limited to technologies that the Confederation deems safe. Maybe it's time we decided for ourselves what's safe." But on Korga Prime, Fleet Admiral Thokmar was already mobilizing the Third Battle Fleet. "The humans were dangerous 800 years ago with primitive technology," he told his officers. "Now they've had centuries to prepare for war. We strike first or we don't get a chance to strike at all." The first real test came in the Tau Ceti system, where a small human exploration fleet encountered a Confederation border patrol. Captain David Park of the EDS Discovery found himself facing down 3 Rigelian destroyers whose commanders were clearly nervous about their orders. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Confederation space," came the transmission from the lead destroyer. "Withdraw immediately or we will be forced to take action." Captain Park studied his tactical display. The Rigelian ships were powerful, but their weapon systems were centuries behind current human technology. A single shot from the Discovery could disable all 3 ships without causing casualties. Instead, Park opened a communication channel. "Rigelian Commander, this is Captain David Park. We're conducting a peaceful survey mission. There's no need for hostilities. Our orders are clear, human. Withdraw or be destroyed." Park made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "Computer, target the lead ship's weapon systems only. Disable, don't destroy." The Discovery's weapons fired once. The beam was so precise that it removed the Rigelian destroyer's weapon arrays without damaging any other systems. The ship was left floating helplessly, but its crew was unharmed. Then Park did something that no one expected. "Rigelian Commander, your weapon systems have been disabled, but your ship is in no danger. We're transmitting repair instructions to your engineering department. You should have full capabilities restored within 6 hours." The stunned silence from the Rigelian ships lasted nearly a minute. Finally, the commander responded, You're giving us technical assistance." "Commander, we disabled your weapons to protect both our crews from a pointless battle. The repair data we're sending will actually improve your systems beyond their original specifications. Consider it a gesture of goodwill." Word of the encounter reached both Earth and the Confederation capital within hours. On Earth, Admiral Chen smiled grimly as he read the report. The plan was working exactly as intended. On Nexus Prime, the High Council erupted in fresh arguments. Some saw the encounter as proof of human treachery. They had superior weapons and weren't afraid to use them. Others saw it as evidence that humans truly had changed, that they preferred to help rather than harm. The real shock came when the Rigelian commander sent his own report to Confederation Command. The human technical assistance hadn't just repaired his weapons, it had upgraded his entire ship. His destroyers now had energy efficiency ratings 30% higher than before, and defensive systems that could withstand attacks that would have destroyed them previously. "They made us stronger," Commander Veltok told his superiors. "They could have destroyed us easily, but instead they gave us better technology than we had before." Similar encounters began happening throughout the galaxy. Human ships appeared in systems where they had no business being, but instead of conquering or destroying, they offered help. A human medical team arrived at a plague-stricken colony on the edge of Confederation space and provided treatments that saved millions of lives. Human engineers helped repair a damaged space station, leaving behind improvements that tripled its efficiency. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. The Tauri Collective, a group of species that had been denied Confederation membership for centuries due to their aggressive tendencies, sent a delegation to Earth. Ambassador Cresvon of the Tauri spoke directly to Admiral Chen in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "For 800 years, the Confederation has told us we're too dangerous for full membership. Too unpredictable, too willing to fight for what we believe in. Does that sound familiar, Admiral?" Chen smiled. "It sounds like they said the same things about us, Ambassador. What are you proposing?" "An alliance. The Tauri Collective represents 47 species that have been marginalized by the Confederation. We're tired of being told what we can and cannot achieve. If humanity is truly interested in partnership over dominance, we want to be your first partners." The announcement sent shockwaves through the Confederation. 47 species suddenly declaring independence and allying with the returned humans. These weren't primitive worlds. The Tauri included some of the galaxy's most innovative cultures, held back only by Confederation restrictions. Within weeks, the effects were visible. Tauri worlds that had been limited to slower-than-light communications suddenly had quantum entanglement networks. Species that had been forbidden from genetic research were developing cures for diseases that had plagued them for millennia. The rate of technological advancement in Tauri space increased dramatically. The Confederation's response was swift and predictable. Senator Crixfall demanded immediate military action. "The humans are building an empire. They're using discontented species to undermine our authority." But Admiral Chen's response, broadcast on all galactic frequencies, changed everything. "Senator Crixfall, we're not building an empire. We're building a community. Any species that wants to join us is welcome, including Confederation members who feel constrained by current restrictions." The invitation was open to everyone, and species throughout the galaxy began to consider it seriously. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Sela found herself facing an impossible choice. Her own people, the Zephyrians, were among the most advanced in the Confederation, but they had been forced to abandon certain research projects because the Council deemed them too dangerous. Now humans were offering to help them complete that same research, with safeguards but without arbitrary restrictions. "What do we do?" she asked Tekvar privately. "If we join the humans, we're betraying everything the Confederation stands for. If we don't, we may be left behind as the galaxy changes around us." Tekvar looked older than his centuries. "Perhaps the question isn't what we do about the humans. Perhaps the question is what we do about ourselves. Have we become so afraid of change that we'd rather stagnate than grow? The galaxy was splitting apart, but not along the lines anyone had expected. It wasn't humans versus everyone else. It was those who embraced change versus those who feared it. And increasingly, the humans found themselves with more allies than enemies. The real test was coming, though. General Vorton had convinced enough of the Confederation military to authorize a massive strike against Earth itself. 300 ships from a dozen different species, armed with the most powerful weapons the Confederation could muster. Admiral Chen watched the approaching fleet on his tactical displays and smiled. This was exactly what humanity had been preparing for, not just the military response, but the choice it would force the galaxy to make. In a few hours, the galaxy would discover what 800 years of human evolution had truly produced. The Confederation fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, like an avalanche of metal and fury. 300 ships from across the galaxy, carrying enough firepower to crack planets. General Vorton stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Galactic Justice, and felt satisfaction course through his veins. All ships, this is General Vorton. Today we end the human threat once and for all. Target Earth. Prepare for planetary bombardment. The response from his fleet commanders was immediate and unified. 800 years of fear and propaganda had convinced them that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic civilization. Better to destroy them now than face conquest later. Admiral Chen watched the approaching fleet from his command center, deep within Luna's military complex. Around him, dozens of human officers monitored displays showing ship positions, energy readings, and tactical assessments. The Confederation had brought an impressive force, but Chen felt no fear. This moment had been anticipated and prepared for since the day the barrier was first raised. Admiral, the enemy fleet is moving into attack formation, reported Captain Torres, now serving as Chen's chief tactical officer. They'll be in weapons range in 17 minutes. Any response from our allies? Chen asked. The Tauri collective fleet is holding position at the edge of the system as requested. Ambassador Cresvan sends his assurance that they're ready to assist if needed. Chen nodded. The Tauri fleet numbered only 40 ships, but they had been equipped with human technology over the past months. More importantly, their presence sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not alone in this fight. Open a channel to the Confederation fleet, Chen ordered. General Vorton's image appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with determination. Admiral Chen, I am authorized by the Galactic Confederation High Council to demand your immediate surrender. You have 1 minute to respond before we open fire. Chen studied the general's face, fear masquerading as resolve. General Vorton, we have no intention of surrendering, but we also have no intention of fighting you. Then you will die with honor, human. No, General, we will live with wisdom. Chen cut the connection and turned to his officers. All defensive systems online. But remember, our goal is not to defeat them. Our goal is to save them. The Confederation fleet opened fire exactly 1 minute later. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward Earth and its moon. It was the largest coordinated attack in galactic history. Enough firepower to reduce both worlds to cosmic dust. The weapons never reached their targets. As the massive barrage approached Earth, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. The quantum field generators that humanity had spent centuries perfecting activated in perfect synchronization. Every incoming weapon was caught in a web of twisted spacetime. Their destructive energy harmlessly dispersed into parallel dimensions. On his flagship, General Vorton stared in disbelief at his tactical displays. Impossible. No defense system could stop that much firepower. General, his science officer called out, we are detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. It's as if space itself is being manipulated. But Chen wasn't finished demonstrating human capabilities. As the Confederation fleet prepared for a second attack, every ship in their formation suddenly found their weapon systems offline. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply deactivated by quantum interference patterns that humanity had learned to generate during their imprisonment. What's happening? Vorton demanded. Our weapons are non-functional, sir. All of them. Every ship in the fleet reports the same problem. Chen's voice echoed through every ship in the Confederation fleet simultaneously. General Vorton, commanders of the Confederation fleet, you came here to destroy us. Instead, we're going to save you. Save us from what? Vorton snarled. From yourselves. As if to punctuate Chen's words, alarms began sounding throughout the Confederation fleet. The massive energy expenditure from their failed attack had destabilized their ship's power systems. Reactor overloads were cascading through the fleet, threatening to destroy dozens of vessels. The first ship to suffer critical failure was the destroyer Righteous Fury. Its reactor went critical, and the ship began to tear itself apart from the inside. The crew had perhaps minutes before the vessel exploded, taking 800 lives with it. That's when something unprecedented happened. Human ships materialized throughout the Confederation fleet, appearing out of quantum stealth fields that had kept them hidden. But instead of attacking the disabled vessels, they began evacuating the crews of the failing ships. Captain Elena Vasquez personally led the rescue operation aboard the Righteous Fury. Her team moved through the dying ship with impossible efficiency, their enhanced reflexes and neural coordination, allowing them to save every single crew member before the reactor finally exploded. Similar rescues were happening throughout the fleet. Human teams risked their lives to save beings who had come to destroy them. Ships that should have been lost were stabilized by human engineering teams who boarded them without weapons, carrying only repair equipment and medical supplies. General Vorton found himself face to face with a human rescue team when his own flagship began to suffer cascading failures. The young woman leading the team looked barely old enough to be a soldier, but her eyes held centuries of knowledge. "General, your reactor is about to breach. We need to evacuate your crew immediately," she said calmly. "Why?" Vorton asked, his voice broken. "Why are you saving us?" "We came here to destroy you." The human woman helped him toward the evacuation point, supporting his weight as the ship shuddered around them. "Because that's what we do, General. We save people."
"Even people who want to kill us." The rescue operation lasted 6 hours.
When it was over, the human fleet had saved the lives of over 40,000 Confederation personnel. Not a single enemy crew member had been allowed to die, even though many of their ships were total losses. Admiral Chen stood in the main hangar of Earth Station Alpha, watching as the last group of rescued Confederation personnel was brought aboard. Medical teams were treating wounded aliens with the same care they would show to human patients. Engineers were explaining to their former enemies how to prevent similar reactor failures in the future. General Vorton approached Chen slowly, his pride clearly struggling with the reality of what had happened. "Admiral, I don't understand. We attacked you. We tried to destroy your world. Why did you save us?" Chen looked at the general with something approaching sympathy. "General, 800 years ago your Confederation locked us away because you were afraid of what we might become. During our imprisonment, we asked ourselves a simple question. What kind of species did we want to be when we were free again? And what was your answer? We decided to become the kind of species that the galaxy needs, not the kind it fears. We became healers and builders and teachers. We became the people who save lives instead of taking them." Vorton stared at the bustling hangar around them. Humans and aliens working together to repair damaged equipment, former enemies sharing medical supplies and technical knowledge. "You could have destroyed us easily." "Yes," Chen agreed. "But destruction is easy, General. Building something better is hard. And humans have never been afraid of hard work." The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Confederation had sent its most powerful fleet to destroy humanity, and instead had been saved by them. The humans had demonstrated military capabilities beyond anything previously imagined, then used those capabilities to preserve life rather than take it. Within days, the political structure of the galaxy began to collapse. Species that had supported the attack on Earth were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had been the aggressors, and their intended victims had responded with mercy. Ambassador Sela announced the Zephyrian withdrawal from the Confederation during an emergency session of the High Council. "We cannot remain part of an organization that chooses destruction over cooperation," she declared. "The humans have shown us what we should aspire to become." Dozens of other species followed suit. The Tauri Collective became the Galactic Commonwealth, a loose federation dedicated to mutual advancement rather than rigid control. The humans didn't lead the Commonwealth, they simply provided the example that others chose to follow. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. There were holdouts who preferred the old ways, species that clung to the familiar hierarchies of the Confederation. But increasingly, They found themselves isolated as the galaxy moved toward a new model of cooperation. 5 years after the battle in the Sol system, Dr. Zelix Morden stood with Elena Vasquez before a memorial on Earth. The monument honored all those who had died during the centuries of separation, humans who had lived and died in imprisonment, and aliens who had been killed by the fear and hatred that the quarantine had represented. "Do you think we've learned our lesson?" Zelix asked, his forearms gesturing toward the names carved in stone. Elena considered the question carefully. Around them, the memorial park bustled with activity. Human children played alongside young Zephyrians, Rigelians, and dozens of other species. Former enemies had become colleagues, then friends, then family.